let's go real quick with the general basic rules that I have to go over every time because we always have new people here. Rule number one, absolutely zero politics, please. There are 10 gazillion channels on TikTok for politics if you want to talk politics, whatever flavor you may be. I can refer you to some, but we don't do politics here simply because as invisible folks, we have enough issues and we take a break from all that for a little bit. Mm-hmm. The second is you will see me do this
and
quite
me.
Often.
I'll do it too.
Quite often. TikTok does not like to see me drink a bottle of water. So every time I bring up a bottle of water on the screen, I get screen and they warn canceling the live. So I'll dip off and drink. I'm drinking Topo Chico, and that's all I'm drinking. And well, maybe some Red Bull too tonight, but that's it. Then I'll partake. I haven't quit smoking yet, so nicotine I have to do off the screen too. So if you see me disappear, it's not that I'm not listening or not participating. Yeah, and
I'm so
that's
proud
it.
of y'all.
And the last thing is there are no drama llamas allowed in the lives. Again, there are a gazillion places to go and have drama. And again, as invisible patients, we don't need it. We're all adults here. We typically have really difficult conversations. So I'm going to do a generic trigger warning that things may come up tonight. And it's not intentional. We're not trying to trigger anybody. But these are real life stories that get shared on these lives. And they're important stories. And regardless of the diagnosis, everybody's diagnosis is important to them on a personal level. And I'm not discounting when I say this, but in this case, when we share our stories, the diagnosis really doesn't matter because in effect, we are all invisible to either doctors or medical staff, society, family, even friends. And you may not have the same diagnosis as that Kendra has, but I guarantee you've been treated by a medical staff or somebody in the general world in ways that she's been treated. And Kendra's story from her illnesses up to her advocating now that she's doing is just really, really powerful. And that's why I was excited to have her on. So I need to just record that one time. So we just hit play.
Just hit
play. That would just solve a whole lot of it. But before we get started, Kendra, can I ask, how did you come up with Miss Blue Whiplash?
Oh, Lord. Okay. As a lot of people know, I'm a veteran. And I had a call sign when I was in Afghanistan, and it was Blue Sky 6. And once I got sick, I started doing some gaming, just, something to do, interact with people. And I started out with my call sign as my username. There were some issues with some stalkers. And so I had a couple of friends because they said that sometimes some of the things I do in this game would be surprising to them and it would give them whiplash. So my nickname is Blue. I kept the blue part, Ms. Blue Whiplash. I'm divorced, so it's Ms. So my nickname now typically is Blue. You can call me Blue, Kendra, Whiplash, whatever, but that's how I got the name.
All right. I was just curious because it's definitely unique.
I've always wondered too, so.
Well, now you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Amanda's is pretty straightforward. Amanda, Chronic Pain Warrior for me. Me, it's Keith in Texas. And I'll give you guys a little secret about all the videos I do in this spot that I'm sitting right here. If you look over my left shoulder, it may be difficult to see, but I'll always make sure the Texas flag is always in almost every one of the videos I do. That's how you know it's me, because the flag is the flag is there. So anyway, so Keith in Texas. So now that we have all that out of the way, everybody knows me, everybody knows Amanda. So give us just like a little bio. And that's right. So you're a vet, correct? And thank you for your service.
First of all, I want to make sure, can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Keith, you kind of glitched for a second. So can you repeat that?
Yeah, my Starlink. My Starlink is doing some weird things. Just a quick bio before we get into your illnesses and what you're doing now. Obviously, you're a vet. You're a vet, right? And
Yes.
once you got out, did you make it into the civilian, or were you sick and just retire, or what happened?
Yeah, I had a kind of a unique military career. I initially joined the Oregon Army National Guard right out of high school, and I went to college during that time. I was an intelligence analyst, and it was the only intelligence analyst in the Pacific Northwest. So we were fairly active with active units. I ended up getting a civilian contractor job for a company that did intelligence software for the military as a field support engineer and as an instructor, and then continued my service in the reserves as an intelligence analysis instructor.
Oh,
I hit my active service time and went inactive, because there's an active time and then there's an inactive time. Doesn't matter what branch, active, reserve, National Guard, you have an active period and an inactive period where they can still call you back. I
right.
was inactive for 2 months, and I got a Western Union telegram calling me up to active duty to go to Afghanistan.
Wow.
So I was married to my first husband at the time, who was also a contractor. There's a lot of stuff there that doesn't even matter in this context, but I got deployed to Afghanistan in 2004, and I was there until 2005. And I returned back, went back to my old job, but I was stop lost. So I was still technically in the military, but I was able to return to my job. And I was having a hard time recovering from that time there. So I ended up, for a period, working for myself as a dog trainer. And then I eventually re-entered the workforce in law enforcement. So I became a crime analyst with Austin Police Department, and I worked there until I remarried, and I worked there at Austin Police Department until I had my first son. I've battled health issues pretty much my entire life, but none of it was really seemed connected. And once I got pregnant with my first son, I was already struggling a lot more. And then after I had him is when things really started going downhill health-wise for me.
Okay.
So now I'm divorced again. Yay, I'm great. But I have two beautiful boys who are 12 and a half and 10.
Cool beans. Now, do you want to start with your story when you were at a younger age, when things started going sideways and you started getting sick, or do you want to start at a different point? It's up to you. I do want just keep in mind towards the end, I do want to get into the advocating that you're doing. I really, really do, because I really think that's an important thing that I encourage everybody to try to do just a little bit of. Just obviously self-advocating, but advocating in other ways too. So start wherever you feel comfortable starting. And then if you want to start young, that's cool. If you want to start whatever, start whatever.
Well, I kind of thought about this because obviously when I was a kid, we didn't know what was wrong with me. But I think it makes the most sense to start when it happened.
Okay.
So I have, just like most people in the chronic illness community, I have a lot of diagnoses and co-conditions. You know, you have one diagnosis and you get a lot of other diagnoses that come along with it. But my two major ones are chronic Lyme disease and hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, that is a connective disorder, connective tissue disorder. It is genetic, and that is something that we're kind of tracing through family lines. But bottom line is genetic. That's not something that can be controlled. Now, the chronic Lyme happened when I was about 5 years old. I was getting ready to go to kindergarten. I lived in the Pacific Northwest, and this was 1985. Yes, I'm aging myself. But back then...
Just for reference, that's when I graduated high school. So there you go. Okay, just for reference. Make you feel better.
It makes me feel a little bit better. Sorry.
There you go. That's all right. All this gray is real. It really is. It's
All
not
natural.
real.
Pay for that?
No. Well, I did. I'm paying for it every day that I wake up. I am
One
still
way or
paying for
another.
it. Yes. But I have a lot of good stories. I have a lot of good stories, so it's kind of a trade-off, right? So,
Yeah, sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah. So five in the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yes. So at that time, Lyme was kind of being talked about on the East Coast. They were starting to realize it was an issue. They didn't know what was going on. But on the West Coast, everybody was saying, the CDC, everybody was saying, oh, it's an East Coast problem. Well, I was raised on 15 acres out in the middle of the woods. You get leeches, you get ticks, you get bug bites, you get all the things where I grew up, right?
Right.
And I was about 5 and I had a tick right here. It had been attached probably maybe a day or so. My mom found it, removed it. I went to go get my inoculations for school, and the following week, and this is all knowledge that I have due to talking with my parents after the fact. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So we went and I had my shots, and I went home, and I got really sick. I got a really high fever. Got flu-like symptoms, just the whole jam. And my mom at the time thought I had a reaction to the inoculations. Eventually, after a couple of weeks, I recovered from it and we went about our lives. When I was younger, I had a lot of joint pain. Was always told it was growing pains. As we all know, that's not a thing now. I had major sleep issues after that time. I got to be about 13 years old and I started having a lot of female issues. At the age of 14, I ended up having to have ovarian cyst surgery because I had 2 massive cysts in my ovaries. My joints started dislocating quite a bit. I was fairly active. I wasn't really into sports, but I was very active outdoors, and joints started dislocating, swimming, just playing with friends, etc. I got a lot of bronchial infections, sinus infections, ear infections over and over again.
Right.
I joined the military, and in basic training, I got a sinus infection that pretty much lasted the entire basic training. They kept throwing different antibiotics at me. None of it was fixing it. And when I got home on leave, I went and saw my doctor, and I ended up having to have sinus surgery. And now, due to all of the antibiotics they threw at me, and not knowing that I had these other issues with the Lyme that had been untreated, I ended up getting a very severe candida infection. I was
Can I ask
walking around.
can I ask a
Yes, go
question?
ahead.
What is a candida infection?
Okay,
'Cause I'm a
candida is, yeah, candida is a bacteria that everybody has in their gut. We
Okay.
have good bacteria and bad bacteria, and the normal normal functioning body, you have kind of like an equal balance of that.
Okay.
Candida basically took over, and it's a bacteria that feeds off of yeast and sugar, etc. Anything that is yeast like, it will feed off of. And what it will eventually do, if you don't get it under control, it can actually encase your organs. It will go system wide, and it will eventually kill you.
Wow.
So I was starting to have all of these symptoms, and my mom was taking me to the doctor. I was 19 at the time. I felt like I was drunk all the time. I couldn't think. I just wanted to sleep. I was not in my right head. I just felt awful. I looked awful. All of the doctors were like, "Oh, you're just stressed out. You just need to reprioritize your life. You're young. You have a lot going on." Because I did. I was working full time. I was going to school full time, and I was in the National Guard in a very highly active military unit.
But you know, we've done 6 of these Invisible No More episodes, and you wouldn't, I would say on every one, the people that have been on have been told you're too young to have XYZ.
Illness
And
knows no age.
it doesn't. And I really wonder if that's something that's taught in med school, or if that's just something assumed in med school, because it's across the board.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just it's an assumption that is so wrong, that they knock all this stuff off the table because of age. Well, age doesn't matter. And you would think that in 2024, enough studies have been done about so many different things that they would understand, well, maybe age isn't an issue here, you know, that let's just take that off the table. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make that point, because I want people to know that if they've been told that like you were told that, and so many other, you're not alone in being, oh, you can't have this because you're too young, you know, and that is so common. It's disgusting. It really is. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to get that to get that out there, you know. So anyway, pardon me.
So I went to probably about 14 different doctors. I saw internists, I saw GPs, I saw gastros, I saw psych doctors, all the things. And my mom is a researcher at heart, and she's a very good researcher. And she started researching my symptoms and getting in forums and all sorts of things. And she found in Utah there was a doctor and a clinic that only dealt with these bacterial overgrowths. And she contacted them. We did a bunch of blood work. And sure enough, I had this very severe candida overgrowth. So I spent about 1.5 years on a lot of different medications and supplements, had a very strict diet. There was not a whole lot I could eat to get it back under control. So that was another stumbling block. After that happened, and still for the rest of my life, I have to be very careful about what I eat. And if I do take antibiotics, I have to make sure I protect my gut because it's very easy for that balance to get out of control for me.
Yeah. Thankfully, nowadays they know a lot more.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot
they've
more
learned
about,
a lot more about gut health
probiotics and gut health, and
but back
how
then,
gut health is linked to so many other illnesses and diseases.
yeah, absolutely. So that was another thing. Again, still having the joint subluxations and dislocations. I always needed more sleep than other people. Always body aches, etc. When I get sick, it takes longer to recover. One of the other things is I ended up getting mono in high school, and I wasn't from kissing a boy. But come to find out later, I had also a chronic Epstein-Barr virus infection that was awful. So a lot of growing up, a lot of different things happening to me, but no real correlation.
Right.
So I guess I can speed up to after I had my first son.
Well, I want to go back. I want to go back a little bit when you're talking about the Lyme, and you were mentioning that it's like an East Coast thing.
It was
right?
at the time.
And at the time, it was an East Coast thing. I recently met some folks who live in New York, and I've been in Texas, Oklahoma, Nevada, and Georgia, right? And Lyme was never an issue brought up to me, but this was a year ago. I'm up in New York, and they're like wearing long pants, walking through the woods and stuff like that. And I'm like, yo, that's hotter than Hades out here. What are you doing?
Yep.
You know? And they're like, well, Lyme disease is terrible here. I'm like, and it was a whole new world to me because I'd never even thought. I mean, I had ticks all over me growing up. I lived in the woods, right? And in the 80s, like you would see commercials for like Cutter or other off brands, you know, that would say that they would keep ticks off of you to fight Lyme and stuff like that. But I don't remember ever having to deal with it or knowing anybody.
For me, Thrin is really the only thing that's going to keep them off of you.
Okay.
And that's dangerous in itself. So,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about that a little bit more, why it's kind of tampered down later on. But my son was 6 months old, and I picked him up out of the crib, and I dislocated my right shoulder picking him up. Now, I had dislocated my shoulder many times before. I learned how to reset it in the military. Went to reset it, and it was still causing me a lot of pain. So after a few days, I went and saw an ortho. I had a slap tear. So I had to have surgery from that. Continued to struggle, higher stresses, new parent, that kind of stuff. I just kept feeling awful all the time, and I'd go to doctors and I'd say, I don't feel good. I'm exhausted all the time. Oh, it's because you're an older mother, because I was 32 before I had my first one. It's because you're an older mother. You're just, you're fine. I asked for thyroid tests, cortisol tests, any tests.
Right.
It's just because you're an older mother. Okay, great. Had my second son, and continuing still to feel worse, but I'm still trudging on. I'm going to turn on my light here. Whoa, that's too bright. There we go. That's a little bit better. Shortly after having my second son, I was lifting up a 3-gallon gas can to go mow my yard, and this shoulder tore, my bicep tore. I had been having increasingly horrific back pain. People kept saying, oh, it's because you're carrying young kids around and you're older. I went to 4 different back doctors, and they did do MRIs. They never did it with contrast. They said, we don't see anything wrong there. There's nothing wrong. And I'm literally like bent over, excruciating pain all the time in my lower back, fighting with energy issues, 9 yards. So I tore this shoulder. My back got worse as well. And it was at a point where I had to decide, what am I going to fix first? I kept going. I finally found a good spinal surgeon. And by then, all of the fluid was out of my disc in the L5S1.
Wow.
And everybody I knew told me, don't do it, don't have spinal fusion. You're going to end up worse off than you already are. And I was like, I can't live like this. I can't live in this much pain. I have to try. And I did. And I have to say, I had an amazing surgeon. I had an ALIF fusion. So they went in through the front, cut me open in the front, and then so they could put a larger cage in, more stable cage. And that is the one part of my body that does not cause me problems to this day.
Wow.
So I have to say, knock on wood, sometimes you have to take a risk. And in that case, it worked out.
Same thing here. They fused C6 and C7 in me, and they went through the front. And I fought it for forever getting it done. And eventually God gave up and had it done, and it was a life changer for me. It really, really was. But they basically had to. It took a migraine for 31 days straight before I would give in. I had to be broken.
I was at the point I was walking with a cane and bent over like an old lady, and I was like, I can't do this. I have to try. Yeah. I got 2 small kids. I have to try.
Have to do something.
So I did, and a few months after I recovered from that surgery, I had my left shoulder fixed from the bicep tear, and still struggling health-wise, but pushing through. Hurricane Bernal, whatever you want to call it, came through. And I did not have a good relationship with my ex-husband's family. Very toxic family, a lot of stress. They live on the coast, and it was a direct hit. And so I ended up having 8 people living in my house, in addition to my son and my husband and my 2 children.
Wow.
And
there's no extra stress there at all.
No.
None.
I got pneumonia, and I went to urgent care, and they gave me a steroid injection, which, come to find out, when you have chronic Lyme disease, that makes the spirochetes go, woohoo, it's party time. And still at this time, I didn't know I had Lyme disease. So between the stress of the hurricane and that sickness and the injection, I crashed. I started having severe brain fog, word loss, memory loss. I started having tremors. I couldn't eat. I was always nauseous. Horrible pain. I ended up started walking with my cane again, And it got so bad that I ended up bedridden. I started to have seizures. And the doctors kept telling me, we don't know what's wrong with you. There's nothing we can see. There's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
So this went on for a couple of months. I found a new doctor out where I lived. She was a DO. So she was a little bit different than an MD. She was kind of a little bit more whole body. We'll look at a bigger picture. But she was also very busy. She was an up and coming doctor in the area. She's now our Travis County's medical person. If you know who I'm talking about, you can look it up. But she started testing me for everything under the sun, and I do thank her for that.
Yeah.
And everything came back negative. She gave me a diagnosis of ME, CFS, and fibromyalgia. I was having neuropathy. Like I said, I couldn't walk. I was in a wheelchair, bedridden. I just felt like I was dying. There were so many symptoms. I can't even begin to name all of them. Everything was coming back negative. So my mom and I started researching online, and we came across Lyme disease. And we found Dr. Horowitz, who is one of the leaders in Lyme treatment in the nation. He's back east, and he's written several books. He has kind of a diagnostic test that has kind of become the standard for diagnostic clinical diagnosis of Lyme. And I ticked off all the boxes.
Right.
So we'd gone about 4 months with heavy testing, no answers, and I was just getting sicker and sicker. And now, mind you, I have 2 very small children that I have to take care of. And my husband was not able to deal with a lot of the stress of that. So it fell on me and my parents. I went into her office and I begged and pleaded with her to test me for Lyme disease. Now, the Western blot is the typical test that they give you in a doctor's office for Lyme disease. And at that time, back in fall of 2017, it was only they said about 50% accuracy as far as a correct diagnosis. It would not give you a false negative, but it would not give you a false positive, but it could give you a false negative.
Right.
Now, that test, they're saying, is upwards of 70% faulty. But she did. Finally, she's like, I don't know what else to test you for. You don't have MS. You don't have any brain lesions. Like, I don't know what else. So sure, I'll test you for Lyme. She did. And I went in for my follow-up, and she closed the door and told me that I was positive for Lyme disease. And at that point, I was just relieved to have a diagnosis, like a lot of us are. You know, you get to that point where you think, like, everybody thinks you're crazy, that you're making this up. And you start to think that too. And when you finally get a diagnosis, it could be the worst thing on the planet, but you're just happy that you have a diagnosis, you know?
I describe it as the dog catching his tail.
Yeah.
And it's like, the dog's like, okay, I got it. Now what? And I think for a lot of people, it's like there's this initial excitement that it's like, thank God I have something, right? I'm not crazy. It's identified, but it's like, what the hell now? You know, it's like a dog. He gets his tail. He's like, okay, I got it. What am I supposed to? What am I doing now?
And that's exactly what happened in that doctor's office. It was great. Now what? And she looked at me and she said, I'm going to have to do some more research on this. I will call you later.
Yeah.
So I went home, told my husband. He had the same questions I did, and I said, she's supposed to call me later. She called me 45 minutes later and told me over the phone that she couldn't help me. She could not treat me because she didn't want to lose her license, and that I needed to find a Lyme literate doctor, and that was all that she could do for me, and that I could no longer be a patient of hers.
So you get from here finally having an answer to just the bottom falling out in your world. It's like,
In 45 minutes. Yeah.
I can't imagine what that is like.
It was hard, but at the same time, like I said, my mother and I had been researching. We had been in forums. We had been talking to other people. And so I had made some contacts. And so after I got that brutal news, my parents and I went to work to find a doctor that would treat me. We found Dr. Ronald Wilson. I could say his name because he's retired now, and he is amazing. I work with him on advocacy work from time to time. He was up in Denton, Texas, which was about a 4-hour drive for me. He was an OBGYN in the state of Texas, and he and his family contracted Lyme disease, and he got really sick, and he started getting treatment back east, and he started seeing in his patients people that were also infected, and so he started treating them. And the Texas Medical Board took his license away. He fought for a couple of years, and he ended up getting his license back. And he decided to go private pay and only treat Lyme patients. And that is what he did until he retired a couple of years ago.
So they took his license because they weren't recognizing Lyme disease? I mean, is
not
that
just that, but they were not recognizing the treatment that he was giving. And we'll talk about this a little bit more because the CDC and the government and insurance companies have a different belief on what Lyme treatment should be versus the reality of somebody who has chronic Lyme. And he was treating people with chronic Lyme, which is a lot harder, more difficult. And yeah. So I got to start seeing him, and I would drive up there every 8 weeks and go see him. And he started me on a protocol, and he tested me for a lot of other things. Like I shared with Amanda today, he tested me for heavy metals, which I had issues with. So we had to do chelation. He tested me for mold, which my house had mold issues on top of that we didn't know about. It just a gamut. Like he was like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it to make your body better. And when your body is fighting this horrible, horrible infection, you have to try and make everything else better, or you're not going to make any progress.
Right.
Yeah.
So he warned me I would get sicker before I got better. And he was right. I spent about 1.5 years taking 65 pills a day between supplements and medications. I was on 2 different IV antibiotics as well as fluids for my POT symptoms. So I was literally hooked up to an IV bag 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is my second port. I've had 2 ports now. But I did start to get better. Now, most of this was paid for out of pocket. Some of the medications were covered by insurance. some of the lab, like the standard lab work, would be paid for through insurance, but like the heavy metals testing. I also went and had an additional Lyme test done, tick-borne illnesses test done. That was about $800 out of pocket. And not only did I have Borrelia burgdorferi, which is Lyme disease, but I also had Babesia and Bartonella. So I had 2 other tick-borne infections that I had to fight at the same time.
Wow.
Typically, if you do get a tick-borne infection, you're going to have more than one because there's so many of them.
Wow.
Was it on the insurance not paying for that test? Was it because of the Texas point of view, or do you think it was just such a rare situation that the insurance company just said no?
No, it was because it wasn't a standard test that regular labs do.
Right.
And the insurance companies don't recognize a lot of these tests that are actually a lot more accurate. So even if you try and get reimbursement, they're like, no, we're not going to do it. Because they would prefer to use the cheaper, less accurate testing that is widely available.
Right. Which then we need to do a live one night just on insurance companies in general. In their general practices, it's like they want to go, they'll go cheap, and end up having to pay X amount more later. I don't know, in a lot of cases where if they covered it, they spent a little bit more initially, but they're all the insurance companies really are is a gamble, right? They're playing the odds. One of my cousins, I forget what you call actuarius, I think's what it is. Like, he has a doctorate in this stuff, and that's what he does for insurance companies. Is when they decide they're going to write a new line of insurance, he figures out the odds of how many people are going to cash in on the policy for the whole company nationwide.
Yeah,
right?
Risk mitigation. Yes.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts that they won't pay $800 for a test, but then they're going to end up having to pay for reports or for other things that I'm not saying that would prevent it, but in the long run, maybe it would have, got that question answered a lot sooner, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
And Amanda, write that down, because I got nothing to write with. Insurance for Tuesday night, because we'll do that, because you're not the only one. Again, a big part of Invisible No More is to let people know they're not the only one. I guarantee you there's 31 people, now that I can see it, in this room right now, in this live.
Thank you all for
31 of us have been screwed by an insurance company.
I guarantee it. Yep.
And we could probably talk for hours just on that. And I'm sorry to derail it. I'm not trying to interrupt everything, but I just wanted to bring that up. Is that we've all have fought that insurance, and it's infuriating. And like even poor Jacob from Indiana, a lot of you guys follow Jacob. Jacob had to get, permission to get his meds again, and something he's been on for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like somebody in an office is justifying their paycheck, is all it really is.
Right.
And all right, I got in the weeds. I'm sorry. I try not to get in the weeds. Y'all forgive me. Y'all need to have like a 2x4, like an electronic 2x4 to smack me across the head.
I needed a nicotine break
TikTok,
anyway, so it works out.
Nice.
So
We'll have that
because I go off on these tangents, So you're seeing this doc, and you're finally getting somewhere, like the mole test, right? And I understand, and it makes, to me, a layperson, blue collar dude, it makes a lot of sense that if you're having illnesses, that any other illness or possible infection or something going on in your environment could cause you more problems. To me,
Right.
that makes sense. And again, I'm not a doctor, and I'll say it again. The only license I have right now is a license to drive a car. So don't take anything I say as medical advice, okay? But I could see why you needed to get that kind of stuff tested,
Yeah, and
So
it's what happens with Lyme disease is the bacteria. It's a spirochete, so it's corkscrew shaped, and it's actually kind of like a cousin to syphilis, in that it will corkscrew and it will embed itself everywhere. So it's not just in your blood, it gets in all of your tissue, your joints. They're saying even your bone. It passes into your brain. It will embed itself in your brain. And it has what's called a biofilm around it. So when you're treating it, it will change shape so that it can fight off the medication.
right.
So what I was having to go through was multiple rounds of different medications, different antibiotics, to hit it at different times depending on what form it was in. And we don't know, we can't tell. So it was trial and error, and also with research from a lot of these amazing doctors that have made chronic Lyme treatment their life's mission, and what they have found successful, that we were hitting it with. So, and as you know, I'm sure anybody who's been on antibiotics for a long period of time, it takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
I was pretty much living off of pills and IVs, but I did start to get better after about a year and a half. My marriage did not. It was already struggling. I got to a point where I was doing pretty well. Dr. Wilson was starting to have more issues with his health, and so he retired. But before he did, he trained up another OBGYN in Texas who also contracted Lyme, as well as his son. And he decided he wanted to treat Lyme patients only. So he trained him up and passed all of his patients off to this new doctor who was in Houston, who is still practicing. So I started seeing him. I was still struggling a lot. I was not in remission, because with Lyme, there's no cure, there's only remission, and you can fall out of remission. He put me on a newer protocol that Dr. Horowitz was having great success with. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it, because I knew that my marriage was coming to an end and I had to get better. That protocol, come to find out, one of the medications my body does not process, and I ended up hypoxic and in ICU twice and almost died.
Okay, I'm going to pause real quick. Define hypoxic.
Okay, so hypoxia is when you do not have enough oxygen in your body, your bloodstream, anything.
Oh, wow.
And so normal, the little thing they put on your finger, so that tests your O2 saturation and your heart rate. You should never be below 90 with your O2 saturation. I'm a smoker, and mine's at this point now, it's typically about 98. I was in the 70s. And then when I was in ICU, I was in the 60s. And we're talking organs damage, brain damage, bad stuff. So the first time that happened, it wasn't quite as severe. The second time it happened, I spent 2 weeks in ICU. I was hooked up to not the normal oxygen. It was this big machine they brought in that was like blowing air up through my head. It was awful. I was on so many IVs of methylene blue to try. Methylene blue basically reverses the hypoxia. That's another drug. And I finally got out of it, but I did have some lung damage from it and probably some brain damage, to be honest with you. But got out of that and told my doctor, I'm not doing this anymore. And it turns out I'm one of 0.12 of the population that has this genetic abnormality that we're allergic to the main drug that was this treatment. But he didn't test me for that ahead of time because it's so rare.
So rare.
Yeah. So,
which I'm not gonna like stand up and like shout for the rooftops and defend him on that, but I can see doctors making that assumption. Unfortunately, even though it's dangerous, it is really dangerous. I mean, we see doctors write stuff off label all the time. Not in your case, but in other cases.
Oh yeah, I was getting a lot of off label stuff
where they don't always take. They can get so wrapped up and so busy they can't remember that this person's can't take this kind of stuff like that. But what a nightmare to be that point at that 0.12%. That it's the wrong lottery, right? It's so rare, you know.
Heather had a question. She asked about a hyperbaric chamber. I honestly don't know. I don't know if that was discussed because I was so out of it. I know we didn't have one at the facility I was at. So I don't know if that would have helped things or not. But I know it does, because hypoxia divers get it, and I know hyperbaric chambers are something that they use from time to time. But they controlled it through basically just shoving oxygen up my nose at a high rate of speed and a lot of methylene blue for a long time.
Try to reverse it.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine.
It finally did.
The longest I was in ICU was for a week, and I didn't enjoy it. I couldn't imagine being there for 2 weeks, and then knowing that you're there because your body's not getting enough of oxygen. My brain would have melted, to be honest with you. And
the thing that was the hardest for me was being away from my kids.
I couldn't imagine.
And this is something, it's not really necessarily pertinent to the story, but it's something that has been really difficult for me. My husband at the time had pretty much given up on our marriage and couldn't deal with the stress. And when I was in the ICU, my mom came and picked me up and took me to the emergency room, and he had a hunting trip planned. And he went hunting, and he knew I was in ICU, and he didn't call the hospital. He didn't call my parents. He checked out. And I'm just so grateful that I had my parents, because they've always been a rock for me and my kids. So after that happened, that was pretty much the end of my marriage. I needed him financially. I needed a place to be. I didn't want to break our family apart, but I couldn't stay with somebody who could care less if I lived or died.
I don't have anything.
You don't have to say anything.
No, but what I want to say though is, as bad as it is to relive it, again, that's what this is all about, is to because unfortunately, you're not the only one that's gone through this.
I know I'm not. Something like, they say 50 to 60% of marriages end up in divorce. And when there is a traumatic or chronic illness, it's like 80% or something. And, that's a statistic. That's not in every case. I'm not saying that that's going to happen to anybody else, but it's a lot of added stress.
And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely not trying to make light of it and saying that you're not the only one that's gone through this. My point in saying that is others need to know that it wasn't just them. Yeah. I guess is what I'm trying to get across. Yeah, and I don't celebrate what happened to you. I cry. It hurts. But thank you for being honest about it and letting other people know that it happened to me too. And
I've told people, every marriage, every relationship has its ups and downs. But and I know it's hard for those of us that are ill. We struggle with a lot of our own guilt and feeling like a burden, but also to remember that our loved ones that are there with us, that we got to give them props to. And if they're sticking by you, let them know how much you appreciate that. Because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. In mine and Valerie's case, Valerie has her ultra weird illness disease. And when we met, that wasn't I had other issues going on in my life that were dangerous and life threatening and everything, but I was self-medicating. But now it's like you've got these two gimps leaning on each other, because when she has an attack, I know before she does that it's coming on, and she puts up with a ton of shit from me when my pain fuse gets about this long, and I get crappy, and so yeah. But thank you, as much as it hurts, for letting people know that they're not alone, So you're in ICU, you get out, and now you're realizing that not only are you this sick, but that it's going to be you and the kids taking on the world, right?
And I forgot to mention also, a little bit prior to this, my boys started to have some health issues, reoccurring infections, and other issues. And so we went ahead and got them also tested, and they both got Lyme disease from me in utero. And that's something, when I get done until up to this point, we'll talk about the contrast with that. But if I had known that I had Lyme at the time when I was pregnant, I could have been treated with antibiotics and prevented my children from getting this disease. And I didn't know. And so they now have to deal with it. I have one that's doing really well as far as the Lyme goes. He only had to be treated twice. But my youngest son has really struggled. So that is, something as far as the advocacy and the importance of knowing how to protect yourself from even getting bitten in the first place, is that you can transfer it to your children. So got out of ICU, and I told my doctor, I'm not doing this anymore. I will go back to my old protocol minus the IVs. And I did, and it was keeping me limping along. And I did continue to start to get better. Got divorced, was doing even better. I think it was a kind of a forced, I'm going to suck it up and drive on type of thing. And about a year and a half after I had gotten divorced, I had to go back to work full time. I had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. Went back into the workforce, became a data analyst for a company that handles pretty much all of the 911 data for the entire country, where if you call 911, the company handled all of the data that comes up on the screen of the dispatcher. So your location, your phone number, your coordinates, all of that. So we handled the hardware, the software, and all of the data management for that. And I became a data analyst for them. And COVID happened. I was working from home, doing that, homeschooling my boys, being newly divorced. And I started having health issues again. And it got worse and worse. And I kept pushing on. I was in horrible, horrible pain. And I started to drink heavily. Because it helped with my pain, and I could get up in the morning and get my job done and take care of my kids. And I drank heavily for about 1.5 years until it got to a point where I wasn't eating anymore. I was just doing my thing and then drinking to be able to sleep and deal with the pain. Because I would go to my doctors and they'd say, there's nothing else we can do for you. The regular doctors, half of them don't believe in chronic Lyme. And my Lyme doctor was like, I don't have any other treatments to try with you. So I ended up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning, and was taken very, very good care of, and talked with my parents, and knew that it was doing a lot more damage than good, and stopped drinking and got back into my Lyme doctor, and we started another protocol that had come along, and it was helping some. But I was still struggling a lot. My balance was horrible. My motor control was horrible. I was using a rollator every time I had to walk. I kept falling. And March of 2023, last year, I stood up and I stomped my foot to squish a cricket in my garage, and my ankle dislocated.
I'll keep going. I just got to stand up.
Yeah, my ankle dislocated and I broke my tib fib.
No.
So I ended up having to have surgery. I had surgery 2 days later on my ankle. I had pretty much shattered both of the two main bones, and there's actually a third small bone in between the tibula and fibula, and I had broken that one as well. But because I was so weak and unable to stand on one leg, I was essentially bedridden again. My pain was managed very well in the hospital. PT was not really, I had, I think, maybe 2 PT sessions in the 2 weeks I was in the hospital after the surgery. And they finally released me to home with home health, with the promise of physical therapy. I got home and I've had a, like a transport wheelchair for a long time. But because my fingers dislocate so much and I have so much neuropathy and pain in my hands, and my house, my floor has carpet in it, I could not physically push myself. So I was stuck on a couch, having to use a bedside commode in the middle of my living room. And I was horribly, horribly depressed. I had some very good friends that I actually met through TikTok who lived down near Bandera, and they got me a used motorized wheelchair and brought it to me. And I was able to get around in that. After that happened, I had the healing went well from that, but I was having a hard time recovering. PT was not going well. They just kept hurting me. I was subluxating for my Ehlers-Danlos. They were not hearing me and understanding that PT for people that have Ehlers-Danlos is not the same as normal people PT. And so I ended up getting a crazy skin rash over my entire body, my legs, my arms, my hands. My skin was sloughing off. I was in and out of the hospital for that. I got C. diff. I was in the hospital for that for 18 days this last summer. And so I did not have a lot of opportunity to gain strength and become more mobile again. In hospital, at least in my experience, the physical therapy has been absolutely atrocious. While I was in the hospital for C. diff, I was given a muscle relaxant along with I was on an SSRI at the time. And this muscle relaxant, I can't remember the name of it, but it also affects your serotonin. And it threw me into serotonin syndrome. I got out of the hospital from C. diff, and within a week, I was planning out my passing. Matter of factly, this is what needs to happen. This is what's best. I need to do the X, Y, and Z. I need you to do X, Y, and Z because I'm done. Horrible pain. I had been in pain management, but they had never treated me with anything other than Lyrica at the point, which did absolutely nothing for me. And
you're not alone in that, by the way.
Yeah, so. I know. Gabapentin and Lyrica did not help me.
Nothing.
No. So my mom comes over to visit, and I had a roommate at the time, and they're sitting on my bed, and I'm bedridden at this point. I'm literally having to be changed because I can't get out of bed to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, Mom, I need you to do blah, 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 because I'm done. And they were like, what the heck? No. So again, back to the ER. The doctor there thought I was just having a psychotic break. My mom continued to say, no, this is not normal of her. There's something else going on medication wise or something. They did their labs and they said, okay, she's got serotonin syndrome. So they treated me with ketamine. Now, that is one of the treatments for serotonin syndrome. But the way it was done, I was given a very high dose in a very short amount of time. And I also have PTSD, not just from my time in the military in Afghanistan, but also from being a military sexual assault survivor. They injected me with the ketamine, and that was the most horrific experience of my entire life. I seized and tremored and had hallucinations for 4 hours in a hospital bed. they had to put bumpers up because I was flailing so much. I was injuring.
Oh my God.
They tried to have me committed once the ketamine had gone out of my system, and speaking with my mother, she was like, no, she doesn't need a psych hold. This isn't a psych issue. This is a medication issue. And luckily, I was able to go home. So after 4 hours, as you can imagine, my body, I already struggled with being able to even stand. My body was done. And they wheeled me out. It was July in Texas. They wheeled me out to the parking lot to help me into my dad's van. And I told them, I said, I need more help. I can't stand. My legs will not work. And they dropped me on the pavement. And they let me lay on that pavement for about 5 minutes discussing what to do with me. And I ended up having burns on my legs. My dad was screaming at them. It was just a big, huge mess. Finally, some security guards came and some additional staff from the ER came. And basically, it took like 6 of them. And they basically just like pulled me up into my dad's car, which of course dislocated my shoulders again. And my dad called our local fire department on the way home, and they met us here at the house, and they got me into the house safely, luckily. So I spent about another week in bed after that situation. They had taken me off of pretty much all of my meds except for like my thyroid and my the things I absolutely necessarily had to have. And I'm still extremely depressed, in excruciating pain, extremely weak. And I ended up, my parents were like, something's got to give. We've got to get you help. So they took me to Dell Seton here in downtown Austin to the ER. They admitted me, and I stayed there for 46 days.
46 days?
Yes. During that time, since it's a teaching hospital, they have like teams, basically. So they have a healthcare team. So you have whatever your needs are. You have multiple doctors. So you have your GP, you might have pain, you might have neurology, rheumatology, whatever. This being a teaching hospital, all of these doctors were young residents. My first team of doctors I had for the first week and a half, and they were excellent. They were managing my pain. They were ordering a lot of tests. They listened to me. They would look over my records that I brought with me for chronic Lyme, because as I said, there's a huge divide in the medical system on whether or not chronic Lyme actually exists. And I had hope. After that, I got switched to a new care team, and I had to start all over with them. Even though they had everything, I had to explain everything to them all over again. My physical therapy went down to once, maybe twice a week. I was told to my face that chronic Lyme doesn't exist and that I'm making it up. I had been on Dilaudid pain medication, which was working well for me. I was not like sleeping all the time. I was talking to people just like I'm talking to you now. And they decided to contact my pain management, and they decided that I should not be on Dilaudid, that I needed to be on Suboxone. So
did they say why?
Because Suboxone would help me more, and it was not going to be addictive. Yeah. So they switched me over immediately. There was no like tape or anything. It was just a switch, equivalent dose switch. I have to admit, it did help for a little while. We played around with dosaging, etc. Kind of found a sweet spot, but I was not making any progress as far as my mobility and my joint pain, and of course subluxations and dislocations. So they started talking about, well, we'll send her to a rehab so she can get actual more physical therapy. My insurance denied it. They tried again. My insurance denied it again. So after 46 days, I came home in an ambulance, and they wheeled me into my house and put me back in bed.
Does anybody else in this live understand the problem? See the issue I have with releasing somebody from the hospital who's still sick in a freaking ambulance? I mean, I get it if on certain extreme cases, but this is you're wanting to do better. You're trying to better yourself.
My parents even said that they would try and pay for rehab for me out of pocket, but nobody would accept me if I didn't have insurance that would have
of course not.
Pay for it. And I had insurance, they just wouldn't pay for it. So yeah.
Kendra, as I'm normally, I have a lot of questions, to ask because everybody's story is just incredible. But I am just, my God, I don't know how. I don't blow smoke up people's ass on this app ever. And when I say that these lives create new heroes for me, you're living, breathing proof of a freaking hero to me. Just a quarter of your story. No, but you are. I say so many times that people who are normal couldn't do this shit. And pardon my French. I'm sorry I'm cussing. I have a mask on.
I mean, I broke my wrist and I reset it myself. So I know what pain is.
Hang on, boys are gonna get loud. If they faced a tenth of what you faced, number one, they wouldn't have survived going overseas to Afghanistan. They wouldn't have survived that. They'd have checked out. Number two, with the issues that you've had health-wise, you pick one, and they wouldn't be able to survive that challenge. They couldn't have survived 46 days in the hospital. And here you are. And I don't want to get to the end, but you're advocating to get better care, to make people realize Lyme is real, which drives me crazy because on the East Coast, it's been noticed as an issue for how long? For forever.
Since the late 70s, yeah.
Right. And to have medical professionals, who I do respect, there are some really good ones out there, to have the guts to say it's not real.
Well, they do the same thing with fibromyalgia.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just can't. I can't. I'm just going to get off my horse, but thank you. You don't know what kind of inspiration you are, and just being you.
I appreciate that. But I think a lot of it is in those 46 days. I've dealt with medical gaslighting pretty much my entire life, just like many of us have. But those 46 days, when I was doing everything they asked and asking for more help, and they wouldn't help me, they ended up also, while I was in there, I ended up having serotonin syndrome a second time because they put me on Cymbalta, and I literally was having visual hallucinations in my hospital bed. And it took them a week to get me off of the medication after I was having the hallucinations before they'd start listening to me. So they sent me home with an order for home health PT. And I started that. And I had to make a lot of life adjustments. My kids had to make a lot of life adjustments, but we did. And I got to a point where I had started walking some with a walker during PT. I was starting to get some strength back. And that was last November was when I found out my physical therapist, who actually, she was a good physical therapist. She was one of the few that hadn't hurt me so far with PT. She was not being treated well in her job, and she quit and left to go to a different company. And the company that my insurance was with, they couldn't find anybody to replace her. So I was out PT again. I did not get PT back until 3 weeks ago. Now, I had been pain management, my first pain management I had been with for a couple of years. And like I said, he was only treating me with gabapentin, Lyrica, kept pushing this spinal cord stimulator. I have full body neuropathy. I have joint pain. I have muscle pain. I have degeneration, you know, and I kept saying, no, 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 no. He put one in my dad. It hasn't helped my dad. Got out of he was part of this deciding factor for the Suboxone. Got out. He kept me on the Suboxone. It was a very high amount. It worked for another couple of months, and then it just stopped working. It just stopped. There was no decrease. It just stopped working. And I was talking to my pain management doctor, and he's like, well, so we played around with dosages. We played around with how many times a day you're taking it. Meanwhile, my teeth are starting to get very sensitive.
Yep. I was just going to ask you that.
I knew that was a side effect. So I brought it up to him. Oh, I had no idea that was a side effect. It's in the freaking literature that you get with the Suboxone. How do you not know that is a side effect?
Because it's inconvenient.
Yeah. So I met with him. I said, look, I've been with you for a couple of years now. I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I need some real help. All I can offer you is the spinal cord stimulator. So I said, well, I've done my research on it. My father, who was sitting in the room, he put the spinal cord stimulator in my father, and it's not helping him. I pointed at my dad. I said, well, from his experience and the research that I have done, that's going to be a no. You have not offered me any other medications or anything other than Suboxone, Lyrica, and gabapentin. Now, mind you, I don't have an SUD diagnosis.
Right.
I never have. And I've checked my records, and I've doubled and triple checked. I don't have an SUD diagnosis. He just wanted the money. Mm-hmm. So he said, okay. He goes, well, just think about it. Think about it. Let me know. In the meantime, we'll keep you. I'll give you an extra another dosage of Suboxone during the day. Which, mind you, it's doing absolutely nothing at this point. So I leave. This was on a Thursday. On Monday, I go to log into my portal, to explain to them that this is not helping. And they have locked me out of my portal. And I called them and they said, "We're sorry, you're no longer a patient of ours." This was in April. So I was at my wit's end. I had switched insurance. I'm trying to get physical therapy again. Insurance isn't approving it. I can't get in to see specialists. I can't get pain management. I'm literally sleeping like 3 hours every 24 hours, not all at the same time, like for months on end.
And you've got kids and you've got life and you have everything else going on.
Yeah. And so finally I found a group of some amazing women that were very supportive of me to help me get through that time. And I was able to get into another pain management doctor who is actually helping me and has gotten me back on pain medication. I also now found out that I am now eligible for VA healthcare fully, not just with my disability, but full VA healthcare. And I've started that process because I simply can't afford private insurance anymore. They immediately after my first PCP appointment got me home health care and got me physical therapy. And I've been doing physical therapy twice a week. I've been in pain management again since June. And I started PT late July. And I'm already starting to walk again.
I'm going to start crying because it's all it took.
But I'm not alone in this.
Was somebody finally agreeing to listen and to give you the time of day and to accept and to say, I want to try to help.
Yeah.
And when you're in relatively short time compared to everything how long you've been waiting for PT, look at what you're doing now. Because somebody finally, a medical person finally gave it down. And I have been drowning in debt and miserable, and I couldn't cook for my kids. I literally was having to DoorDash things because I didn't have the energy to sit up even to reheat something. I didn't have the strength. And now I'm cooking full meals for my kids from scratch. And I'm starting to walk again, and I'm making goals, and and that's due to physical therapy and pain management. Hold on a second. Come here, bud. Sure.
Sorry, my kid's here.
That's no worries.
Okay.
You want to say hi?
No worries.
It really goes to show, I think, for the three of us. Hey, bud.
Hi.
You've got a great mama.
Yeah, you do.
You have a really great mama.
And that's okay. And then
The importance of opioid pain medications when it comes to proper pain management is huge. I mean, all three of us have been through the ringer when it comes to not getting our meds, and then we're kind of all in like the same chapter where we're, like Kendra's just now starting to get her pain under control and everything. And I remember being there about 6 months ago as well. And I always tell her, I'm like, I'm so excited for what the next couple months is going to look like for you, because I really, it's a process, right? It's a process finding the right meds, finding the right dosage, all of that is a process.
But I don't think you can overlook the mental weight that's lifted once.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I know I've lived the process of having to find a decent doctor, a good doctor, and the and y'all and I'm not saying it's easy. It is not. And Kendra will tell you that that waiting period till you find somebody, I think you'll agree,
It's
is hell.
excruciating. It is.
And Amanda, I know you've been there too. But it's the mental relief. It's almost like a shock. Like, is this real? And when's the other shoe going to drop? Right. But it's, for me personally, that was half of it. The validation, as well as now we can actually maybe get some stuff done. Right.
Yeah.
And you got the little one that just came in and gave you the hug like that. And
that's
when you
my
talk
youngest,
about,
that's Raylan.
you talk about needing about inspiration, that's living, breathing, walking kiddo inspiration right there. And now that you have the doctors, right, that God bless.
He's the one that has struggled a lot with the Lyme. When his infection got really bad, he got PANS, which is a brain inflammation. And he didn't start speaking until he was 3.5. And so we went through a lot of therapy. He has severe ADHD. So we deal with my little Tigger, I call him. But he also has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And his is affecting him a lot more severely at a younger age than it did me. So I feel like it's not just my responsibility as a mom to keep trudging on, but I have to show him how he's going to have to keep pushing and navigate through life with the challenges that I know he's going to have to face.
I don't want to cut everything else off, but I want to get to the advocacy, and I know it's getting late. And do they have school tomorrow? Are they in school yet?
I homeschool them.
Oh, you homeschool?
Yeah.
And you're homeschooling.
Yeah, she's
something you don't do.
It's like,
I mean, I bet.
I don't walk a whole lot right now. I don't ride a bike.
Well, but I mean, geez, But I think it dovetails into what you're kind of doing and how you're advocating it for things now. And it's for you, it's for others, but it's for your sons as well. Because if they're fighting like the Lyme disease and stuff like that, so kind of, can you get into a little bit of that? Because that's a big part that I think people need to realize you're doing as well, even though you're still fighting all this. I'm going to just say garbage, right? Because this illness, I mean, it's just a polite way of saying that you have bad things going on still. But it's trash. Yeah. But you're starting to you're advocating for people just like your son, right? And you.
Well, and there's so there's a lot of different types of advocacy, and we see a lot of it on TikTok. People saying I'm a this advocate or I'm a that advocate. And there's different types of advocacy. There's patient advocacy, there's informational advocacy. There's a lot of different types. This is the second year that I've done this. I started working with Center for Lyme Action. And this organization is basically at the forefront of getting funding from the government to pay for education of doctors, research, treatment, that sort of thing. Now, I have to back up a little bit because with Lyme disease, there's a lot of controversy. There's the government and the CDC and the Infectious Diseases Society of America that believe that Lyme is Lyme and you cure it. Doesn't matter how long you've had it, been undiagnosed, you get antibiotics for 2 weeks and you're fine. They have held their ground on that for years, but now because of all of the research that's come out, they have kind of moved a little bit in saying that people who have gone undiagnosed for long periods of time end up with permanent damage, which yes, we do. But they're calling it post-Lyme disease syndrome, not chronic Lyme disease. There's another big organization that is very much, this is a real thing. It can be passed from mother to child. Very into research. Most of the Lyme literate doctors are on this other organization side, ILADS. I can't remember what it all stands for right now. I apologize. The CDC hires certain doctors to write guidelines, right? So these people that are with this group, the IDSA, are in bed with CDC. They're board members of IDSA. They work for CDC, and they're also consultants for the insurance companies, paid consultants. So, it's fine, come here. Sorry, hold on a second. My other
You're
boy.
fine.
You going to
You're
bed? Okay. Can you say hi to everybody? Just say hi.
Hello.
Hey.
I love you. So when we talk about insurance companies saying, oh, well, we're not going to pay for this because it's not a standard treatment, this is this incestuous circle that a lot of chronic illness patients deal with, because you have doctors that are on boards of certain organizations that are also employees or consultants for the CDC, who are also paid consultants for the insurance companies. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, it's called grifting.
Yeah,
Is what it is.
and
You know, where they
it's a
line their
conflict of
pockets.
interest. It's bad,
Yeah.
but it happens all the time.
Mhm.
So basically,
Yeah.
this organization I've been working with, they do a lot throughout the year, but one of the major things that we focus on is getting appropriations funds for more funding for chronic Lyme research in general, that can be allocated towards research, funding for assistance, medication trials, education for medical professionals. And so one of the great things about this organization is that we work with our congressmen and senators, and we do a Capitol Hill run, basically. But I don't have to go to Capitol Hill. We work things where we end up having meetings, we have Zoom calls, and we do pretty much everything from the comfort of our own home. We
Right.
fill out appropriations forms if you're able to do that. We follow up with senators, congressmen, to get those forms. We send in our stories, we have meetings, etc. So when they have their appropriations for the budget for the year, we work to get a portion of that for our cause. And tons of different organizations and healthcare communities do this. This is just for Lyme. So in the early spring, in about February, we sit down and we have meetings with our senators, our congressmen. We basically plead our case, say this is the funding we had this year, this is what we're asking for this year. We tell our stories, we share our experiences, and then throughout the rest of the year, we fill out paperwork, do follow-up phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. We are at the point now where, at least with our cause, that we have gotten pretty much approval from all of the congressmen, that they have granted us an increase in all the areas we asked for. It's not, of course, as much as we have asked for. It never is.
Right.
But so now that appropriations bill will go before Congress, and then that will be voted on in November, and we'll see what happens then. So it's pretty much a year-long affair. It's not daily. We had people that just were on the calls to lend support, that they weren't ready or willing to share their story yet. We had people like myself and Dr. Wilson that we shared our stories and explained to them why this funding was so important. We had people that were willing to give the ask of what we were asking for. I spent time filling out appropriations forms in the state of Texas for our different congressmen to submit to them. And that was all, they gave us the training on how to do all of that.
Right.
So this is just another form of advocacy that I want to kind of highlight, because it's not just for Lyme patients. There are organizations for almost every condition out there, And there are ways that if you feel strongly about it and you may feel like total dog turd and you can't do what you want to do, but if you can get on a Zoom call from bed and just support the person that's sharing their story in these appropriations meetings, that's advocacy, and that's helping.
That's something. And we were talking on the phone earlier tonight that, and I'll share what we're about the advocacy part. I'll share what we talked about. I really encourage people just to find something. And I realize for everybody, it's different. For some people, it might be like you said, just jump on the Zoom call and hold your phone in front of you, or the laptop or the iPad in front of you, right? Or fill out a form or an application or something, right? You don't have to be the one that travels to Washington, D.C. or to the state capitol. Other people who have the energy and the ability to do it will do that part. But if you can just do something, I know we're hurting. I know we are physically hurting, and mentally we're struggling, and our illnesses keep us down. But if we can do just a little bit, get on TikTok and tell your story. Be vocal in some way. Every little bit of that type of whatever advocacy you choose adds up.
Well, and it doesn't just add up, but it also, I'm homebound. I can't drive. The only time I get out is to go to doctor's appointments. Mm-hmm. And it gives you another avenue and another opportunity to meet other people that are going through what you're going through, or at least understand what you're going through, and making connections and putting energy towards something positive, which is huge for your mental health.
It is unbelievably huge. And even if it's something small, just try to do something. I honestly believe it'll make every person feel a little bit better about, because all of us have had so much ripped away from us, and we're destroyed by it. So maybe we can start to fill a little bit of that hole that was taken away by getting on a Zoom call and just hitting the mute button. You don't have to say anything. Just be there, or listen to somebody share their story, or share your story. Let somebody else know they're not alone in what's going on. Amanda and I, we strive to let everybody know they're not alone, because everybody needs to be validated and know that they're seen. And if you can do that for somebody else, you're providing an invaluable service. And at times it sucks, but being there for somebody is sometimes really what that person needs. And when you can join that Zoom call, you can learn how to fill the appropriation forms out, learn how to do something. And I promise you're going to start, some of that darkness is going to start going away. I promise you. I'll guarantee it. If it doesn't, I'll send you a chocolate cake. How's that? Right? And I love chocolate. And that would be very tough for me to send somebody else a chocolate cake instead of me eating it. And it won't just be like Hostess Twinkies or whatever. It'll be like an actual cake if it doesn't work for you.
And it works like a ripple effect. You know, it starts with you helping one person, and that person tells another person, and it blossoms into something really beautiful and amazing in your life, or at least it has for me.
And I think, Kendra, you'll agree. Being on that Zoom call or filling out those forms, it gives a sense of accomplishment.
It does. It really does.
I'm not just going to lay here and take it any longer.
Right.
And I think that's important for all of us. You know, God, just be vocal. Damn it. You know, don't be invisible anymore. Scream it from the freaking rooftop. You may not get everything you asked for in your appropriation bill, right? But you did something. You let them know that you were there.
And we're going to get more funding than we got last year. So, you know, that's always a win.
It's a win all the way across the board.
With, you know, it's not just government. It's not just medical. It's not just insurance companies. It's society as a whole. You've got to stay in people's face and not let them forget about you.
That's it. You know, about not being invisible anymore. And
put a face to them.
Put a face to it, a voice to it, right? And we may not win today, right?
No, we don't.
We may not win today, but at least, damn it, well, they know that I'm here.
Yeah.
Right. They know that we're all here, and that's what's important. You know, is not being the invisible. I've said it 10,000 times in this app alone. You know, being invisible for so long got us nowhere. And so, you know, being vocal may not get us anywhere either, but at the same time, we're going to feel better. You know, so I think it will. I think so. So, before we wrap up, because we've almost hit the 2-hour mark again. It's crazy how that happens.
I left a whole lot of crap out, but that's okay.
I know. Yeah. We'll have to have you back for part 2.
We're to share on my page now that I need to get back to making videos. So,
but yeah, before we get out, does anybody have a question specific to Kendra about anything that she shared or anything else? And if not, we'll wrap it with everything that we've accomplished tonight.
And the last 3 nights.
And my DMs are open. My page is open and my DMs are open. So if anybody has any questions later or comments or just wants to talk.
Yeah, if you're not following her, you need to, because she's a hell of an inspiration to me.
I promise I'm going to start making videos again now that I'm starting to feel better. I'm getting back in that headspace. So.
Yes.
It's hard to put yourself out there when you don't feel well. But.
Yeah, it's. I've been there for the past 2 weeks. So to wrap up, thank you, Kendra, for all this.
Thank you for giving me a place to be safe and to share.
For being honest and for vulnerable, because that wasn't easy. But thank you for letting others know that they're not fighting anything by themselves. This whole Thursday night thing has taken a life of its own, and it's because of people like you that are willing to come on and share.
It's a beautiful thing you guys are doing. I really do. And like you and I have talked about, everybody that comes on here has different diagnoses and different experiences, but we all find something in common with their stories.
Yeah.
And that's what's important.
That's what it is. You know, it's every Thursday night just wipes me out, just completely wipes me out because of how honest you guys are. I got nothing besides I don't even know what's happening next week. I know who's going to be on next Thursday night.
I don't know what's happening tomorrow, so I just go day by day.
You know,
one day at a time.
At some point, I'll be posting a video over the weekend. I will do my best to get this video downloaded and uploaded on the YouTube channel. Don't forget the YouTube channel there. every episode for every Thursday night episode is up on the YouTube channel. We got last night's, night before last, Tuesday's live with Amanda and myself. That's on YouTube channel.
Always awesome.
So you can, even if you don't watch it, just walk around, put your headphones in, and listen to it as a podcast. That's what I recommend doing. And if you have any questions, thank you for all the gifts that happened across here tonight. It said that we are like, what's it say? We're better than 99% of creators with everything, with tips and with diamonds and all sorts of whatever TikTok says tonight. So thank you for that. If I am going to pitch the subscribe thing on my page, because I really want to go to the animal shelter. I really want to do that, and I haven't pushed that yet. And it's like $2.99, and together we can like make these puppies at the animal shelter, let them know they're not forgotten. So think about it, please. I'm not blowing the money. I'm not like throwing it away. It's going to be dog treats. It's going to be cat treats. It's going to be dog toys. It's going to be cat toys. It's going to be like hamster things because they have hamsters there too, you know.
Hamsters so we're going to shelter?
Yeah, they do, you know. So it's $2.99, and I promise you, I'm not just going to piss the money away on Topo Chico, okay, or cigarettes or anything like that. It's all going to go to the animals, you know. And Dixie just said first time sub was on sale, so there you go. But yeah, we love you guys, and Thursdays happen because of this community means so much to me. This community has given me so much. Kendra has given me another hero to look up for, and when I'm kicking myself in the ass, you know, I can't do this now. I've got another reason I can play back in my head all the stuff that she's survived that I know I couldn't have because she's so freaking strong and amazing.
We gotta let our internal yes you can yell at us a little louder sometimes, because I struggle too. Trust me,
Absolutely.
So if anybody has questions about tonight, if anybody wants to be on Thursday nights, if anybody has any kind of comments or something, please message me, message Amanda, or I'm going to say message Kendra too. You know, if she won't talk to you, she'll bounce it back to me or Amanda. But Kendra will. So we, I appreciate you guys. You guys have a wonderful night tonight. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it.
You're incredible.
More than you ever know.
You're incredible. So you guys have a wonderful night tonight, and we'll talk to you very soon. All right. We'll see you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. See you. Bye.